Dennis Short, welcome to the show, brother. How we doing, my man?
I am doing great. Glad to be here. Hopefully, we can help somebody.
We're gonna help a lot of people, I think is what we're gonna do. 28 clinics, soon to be 29, all in what I would call rural Kentucky, all on insurance, which I think is a topic that we'll happily get into because that's obviously a very controversial thing between cash and insurance. But yeah, like, what do you know that most people don't know, I guess, about
Nothing.
scaling and building a business? Because like I mean, it's crazy to think like the industry is pushing into this cash-based thing. And you just told me before we started recording that you're about to open your 29th on an insurance-based model. You got to know something most people don't know. Let's dive into it. What do you got?
Well, I don't know. First of all, I think insurance scares people when it doesn't need to. Schools traditionally, just glaze over it. They talk about documentation. They talk about that things, and they sort of glorify, the cash-based practice. Now, I have nothing against the cash-based practice, but in general, I think you know patients want to use their insurance. They call you. One of the first questions they ask is, "Are you taking new patients?" The second thing they say is, "Do you take my insurance?" So, if you've been in practice for 30 years and you're just burnt out on insurance and you says, "I'm switching to a cash practice," and you lose 80% of your clients, you're probably going to be okay. Right? Let's face it, you got a client base. When I stopped practicing last I look, I had 10,000 patient files. I would have been fine to switch to a cash practice. Um, so there's that, but I think students sometimes don't get the understanding that if you are getting straight out of school, you kind of got to take whatever comes in. You eat roadkill if you have to, right? You got to do whatever comes in the door. And so starting out the cash practice, I think, is a dangerous thing. It's not that it's all negative, but it's a dangerous thing, I think, for the young Cairo, especially somebody who wants to start to practice right out of school. And then when I get in and I do a lot of coaching with doctors all across the country, and I think a lot of times they do it out of fear. I'm going to get sued by this insurance company. They're going to ask for recoup. They're going to ask for all these types of things. And you hear horror stories, and I'm going to tell you, there's lots of horror stories and they're not all wrong. Okay, so yes, that is a risk. However, if you know what you're doing, it's no problem. I've been audited more times than I got fingers and toes, and I have never paid $1 back to an insurance company ever because the documentation is what saves you. So I think a lot of times what a doctor will do, they want to cash practice, and really all they want to do is have poor documentation. And I'm not gonna isolate out anybody in particular here. I don't want to badmouth anybody. I don't want to do that. That's not my gig. But sometimes I'm going to use examples of things that I saw that it's a little ridiculous when you sort of if you look at a chart audit from an insurance perspective. Okay, so I'll bring up some of those things. Like for instance, I audit a lot of charts because I'm sure later on we'll get into it. I also teach business at a chiropractic university, and I have to audit a lot of charts that students send to me when they're out in the rotations. And you'll see this the case study said or the case history is like the patient's got low back pain that radiates down to the right foot to the big toe with foot drop and all that. Big deal. That's big stuff, right? And then you look at the diagnostic code and it says they have a unspecified low back pain.
Hmm.
I'm like, that is not a primary diagnosis. Like, you can't use that and expect the insurance to pay. A medical doctor a lot of times will use that diagnosis, unspecified low back pain, because they're going to do what? Give you a Lortab and send you home. You want to see it once. We're wanting to see people, 25 times, get the insurance to pay for it. And you need to have a diagnostic code that's, you know, equal to the severity of the problem that needs 24 visits. So if you diagnose someone with unspecified low back pain, and I want to, that for the record, unspecified means you don't know. And as a professional, I think you should know why they have low back pain, right? And the other thing is, if you just call it with subluxation or somatic dysfunction, you're going to get 3 visits. And so, a lot of doctors that used to be insurance and they switched to, or used to be insurance and they switched to cash, I should say, um, they're doing it because they're getting so many denials.
Hmm.
Insurance is denying everything. Oh, I'm getting out of this insurance racket because they're denying everything. Oh, they want a pre-certification. They want this. They want that. I personally have no problems with that. Like we do the pre-cert, we get the visits. When they run out of those 10 visits they give us more up to the limits of their insurance. We have no problems because our documentation is actually showing really what's wrong with the patient. We're showing progress with the patient. We're doing all that. But again, I see a lot of people want to do a cash practice because they just want to put an X in a box or something and then say, oh, yeah, I want to see you 27 times with this X in the box and you're diagnosed with something that's so low grade that you should be home taking an aspirin with that. That's all you should be doing. So I
How
think,
much does demographics play into this, or not demographics? Excuse me. How much does geographics play into this? Because like, what about like if you were to open a practice in, let's say, Houston here in Texas
mhm.
versus rural Kentucky? Like, I mean, I gotta imagine that
Oh,
plays into a factor, right?
big factor, big factor. For instance, and that's why I think people go all across the country and open up practices. You need to know what style of practice you have, and you may need. You're not a tree. You should actually pull your roots up and go somewhere that's more beneficial. So a lot of the states around the rim of the country have like $10,000 deductibles on 90% of the plans. If that's the case, you might want to be a cash practice. Like let's face it, even my friends that are working in those states, they will still tell their patient that they take insurance because it may pay for it after that. So at least you can still say to the patient, yes, I take your insurance. And that, a lot of times that's all patients want to know. Do you take my insurance? The answer is yes. You're not saying that they're not going to, you're going to need $10,000 worth of care and it's only going to pay for one. Okay. But yes, you do take it. Okay. So it's still good to say, yes, you take their insurance. So, but in those areas that have a high deductible, it's easier to have a cash practice because the high deductible is for the physical therapist, occupational therapist, it's for the medical doctor, it's for surgery, it's for a chiro. It doesn't matter. So that patient's going to spend $10,000 no matter what. In the areas where insurance is better, and that's usually in the center of the country, the Kansas, the Missouri, all that, where the insurance is better, less deductibles, less co-pays, it still behooves you to kind of do a insurance-based practice.
Hmm.
Other states, like in Florida, for instance, they close networks. In Kentucky, here, we have something called any willing provider, which means if you actually send an application to the Blue Cross and you meet all their criteria, they can't deny you. But in Florida, they can say, hey, we have enough chiropractors in your area. And so we're not going to let you in network. They don't have to let you in if they have enough providers. It's not an any willing provider state. So with that, hey, if you want to take insurance and you're going to go in Miami, you might want to think twice. I've had several people over the years call me to want me to coach them, and that was their problem. I specifically remember one guy from Idaho. He moved to Florida. He wanted to have an insurance practice in there. He wanted to live in Florida. And when he was down there, he tried to get a network and he got denied. And he goes, I
Hmm.
could throw a rock on 8 chiros, he said, from my front doorstep, and they all take insurance except me. And he goes, there's no way I could survive this. And I goes, I agree. And 6 months later, he closed up shop and he moved back to Idaho. So it comes down to it is, you need to know what you're getting into, and it's very much geographically determined.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess if we were to dig into the bigger fears of chiropractors doing the insurance versus the cash base, I think you nailed one of them early on is yeah, it makes documentation a lot easier. But I think another one too is what you kind of said of the lack of control. I think as a chiropractor, you lose a lot of control because, like, luckily, all 28, soon to be 29 of your clinics are in Kentucky. And so, like, if something does change in Kentucky related to how somebody reimburses or whatever the case might be, you could probably pretty quickly spin that out to all the locations because you have the systems and process to do that. But if you're spread out even farther than that, like that changes so much in terms of
Oh,
like your ability to systematize that.
if you get in multiple states and all those states have different regulations and some have pre-search, some Medicaid covered, some Medicaid, it's all that. But let's face it, this is the cost of being a large organization. It doesn't take much to cripple it. And, one of the things that when I teach it in business, I say, hey, you got to make sure that P is equal I minus E. That's profit is your income minus your expenses.
Mm.
Keep your expenses low so that your income actually turns into profit. So a lot of times you go into offices and they have a 60, 70, $80,000 a month overhead, and they're bringing in, it looks like a busy office. There's hundreds of people coming and going, but there's no profit. And so if there's no profit, you don't have anything. You just have the illusion of success. This place is busy, but there's no money being made. So you always got to be thinking about your profit margin and making sure that your expenses are low, because anybody, currently right now in Kentucky here, for instance, Um, the PI practices are under attack. Florida's the same thing. And so, only one strike of the pen on the legislation, and they're dead in the water. So because they only have a client of one, it's a PI patient. That's it.
Hmm.
That's a vulnerability from a business perspective. Okay, but that's their model. So you just got to realize that no matter what model you have, cash based, insurance based, or if it's PI, shoot, if you have a pediatric practice and then all of a sudden your state says it's against the law for you to treat pediatric patients, what are you going to do? Okay.
That's kind of become the hot trend. I feel like lately as well too. It's funny you say that. I didn't actually think about it like that, but I've been seeing a lot more pediatric practices, and they're relatively successful.
Oh
Honestly, like
yeah,
they do
yeah,
well.
yeah.
They're a great niche, and they're really good at targeting, and you end up getting the whole family. But yeah, if all of a sudden that's not an option anymore, that'd be tough.
So again, one of the rules in business is that if you have just one single client or one single type of client, it doesn't take much. You're very vulnerable. So how do you diversify? I have some sports people, I have some PI practices, I have this and that, and that takes a lot of that vulnerability out of it. That risk goes down. And a lot of running, 28 clinics is about how do you limit risk? This is the Richard Branson thing, right? How do you limit the risk? So if it goes under, that you don't go under individually.
Hmm.
So you always have to limit your risk. And again, diversifying your practice is a great way to do that. That's
So,
another reason. Like if you're hiring on associates, I think the normal trend is if you're having an associate to say, if you're in your office and they're just going to be your sidekick, oh, it's better to have someone who's just like me. I think that's the opposite. I think you should have someone who's different than you. If I have a doctor in an office that's male, I like that. My second associate I like to have as a female. Okay. If I have someone that's in the sports management, I like to have a pediatric next one. If I have somebody that's in more low force techniques, the next one I'd like to have someone that's more Gonstead based. Okay. Because you'll give better service to people when you got that diversity, but it also takes a lot of that risk out of it because you can lose one, but you're not going to lose it all.
how do you operate 28 offices? I think you mentioned that your WhatsApp chat is
Gingerly.
like 1,000 people or something like that. And it's like, how do you, same branding, same system, same team culture across all these locations? I've talked to a number of docs. I've actually had them on the show that struggled to open 2 locations, and you've done it with 28. How?
Um, well, first of all, um, I'll give you a story here. I had a team came to a different company came to my house one time. They say, "Can you teach me how to open up multiples?" And I was asking him things like, "Okay, they were very personable people." And I said, "Okay, very good. You're likable. That's a good thing." Okay. I goes, what codes per visit do you have? Well, I don't know. What's your average collections per patient? Well, I don't know. What is your PVA? I don't know. I goes, listen here, buddy. I said, you're about ready to get your ass handed to you. He goes, what do you mean? I goes, listen, you have a successful practice because it's driven on your infectious personality. Okay. The next person you could come in is not going to be like you in all probability. So therefore, if you're going to have it run on that you're a nice guy, I'm telling you, you're done. You're done. Like, don't even try this. So you have to have it rid on systems, and some of those systems are based on statistics analysis, of course, where you say, "Hey, I need to know all of this information." So I think systems and procedure manuals. I have a procedure manual for everything. Just think about McDonald's. McDonald's actually has a procedure manual on how to fill a salt shaker, and that's how they can be run by teenagers. Right? Seriously, there's a page in the procedure manual on how to fill their salt shakers for their fries and how many seconds you're supposed to have this front thing upside down to put the right amount of the salt on the fries. So, so you got to think about in order to run that many locations, you have to be very systems driven. You can't just let everybody say, okay, Wild West, let everybody go do whatever they want to do. Now, I don't micromanage doctors on, oh, you're a Gonstead and oh, you're an activator. I don't really care too much about that. Okay. I don't, I let those doctors have autonomy in whatever they want to do there. And I also don't micromanage them on, you have to diagnose that person with sciatica. We don't set those types of parameters. So we're not talking about those types of systems. But the systems on, say, for instance, how a patient is processed, what needs to be filled in on an exam form, how you diagnose neurological first, and then you got to put in your structural things and then your chronic problems and all that, those types of things. These are the order of operations and how you put your diagnostic codes in. Those are the systems that we do. And then all of our stats that we get back, and then we feed it back to the doctor because most doctors, when they get into an office, they just get on autopilot. They treat the same patient, every patient very similar, and they don't realize, like, hey, you haven't done any extremity adjusting on anybody all month. Like, what's going on here? So the stats allows them to have a sort of a look in the mirror to see how they're performing, because they're not going to notice that while they're in the room with the patient. So a lot of systems matters, and a lot of training is involved with all of that. And we have a lot of statistics platforms back and forth. Now, let's face it, I go and I look at a lot of different chiropractic practices all around the country. And I think we're more organized than most, but I don't want to get you to think that somehow I have the miracle cure here. Like, we have our problems too, right? We have our problems. I've had to let people go, we have our problems. But anyway, I think systems is the biggest part of it. With giving, knowing where you can actually let the doctor be their personality shine through and where you can't. And so I think that's a big thing.
That's you perfect segue for me. That was the next question I was gonna ask is how do you strike that balance between like having a system that's so dialed in that tells you how to wipe your butt when you go to the bathroom to like allowing a chiropractor to be a chiropractor? That's one part of the question. The other part of it too, I'm always curious about too, is like how do you from like a technical standpoint, where do these systems live, I guess you could say, in a place that could also be uh edited and evolve with because like things change, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to edit these
Too
probably
often.
right. Yeah, exactly. So like how do you create a structure where you can still be flexible enough to move with the changing of times, but also be processed enough to like stay efficient? How do you strike that balance?
Well, obviously, procedure manuals are given to staff. They have them, and they can write all over them. It's theirs, even if they don't work for us anymore. We're okay with them taking it. We don't care. We don't think they're proprietary or anything of that sort. So that we needed to take ownership to that and fill things out. It's amazing to me when you give it to them and say, "Can you read this?" And they say, "Sure." And then they make the silliest mistake, and I'm like, "It's like page one. Like, why didn't you know that you can't do that?" So sometimes I wonder if they read them. So you could have
hold on
procedure manuals,
hold
but
on
still you
can
need to have guardrails up for them.
I pause you for 1 second before you get into
Yeah.
that? We recently went to there's a gun range here in Austin. We went and shot some guns. And one of the things they do is they have you read this like basically like a safety sheet. And it's like the way that they make sure you read the safety sheet though is that like midway through the sheet, there's a little sentence that says like if you read this, just shout a random color out loud. And so like you're sitting there and all of a sudden you hear orange, teal. And it's and then there's like another one at the end too. I can't remember what it was. It was like name like your favorite card or something like that, but it can't be the ace of spades or something like that. So then people are like yelling random cards. But you just got me thinking about that with like your manual. Is like you could put little like, fly
Yeah.
traps in there of like, oh, they actually read it because they sent me an email about, their favorite cat or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But like
Yeah,
anyways, go
yeah.
ahead.
So you always get people that just sort of, going through the motions and act like they're just studious, but they're not really. That happens. They have a tendency to get weeded out, especially in staff. Since COVID, of course, there's been staff turnover has been ridiculous. We don't have very many doctor turnover. It's more than it used to be, but it's even getting better now. So, most doctors that come with us, they do well financially. We're not harping and, constantly browbeating them over whatever. So they have a tendency to stay 10, 12, 15 years. So we don't have a lot of turnover. That's one of the reasons
Wow.
why we've been able to grow, because if I was an organization that had 50% turnover every year, I don't know, I could never be the size that I am. So, good management is an important thing to do, and keeping your employees happy. If your employees are not happy, they're going to jump ship, they're going to go somewhere else. Okay. So it's hard to grow when you're constantly having to replace people. And so I'm quite fortunate that we haven't had to do that. But maybe that's a testament to our system, but it's also a testament we're nice people. If someone says I need a maternity leave, we're like, yes, and we just have a fill-in doctor go for maternity leave. Where I know I've heard horror stories of, oh no, I couldn't have a baby without doing this, and I couldn't get off, and I could, some organizations are very, very strict about those things, and doctors have a tendency not to stay in organizations like that. So we're really lenient and making sure that people are regenerated and revived by taking vacations, that type of stuff, and we incentivize them a lot. Bonus structures are high in our organization, so we have a tendency to keep people. So that's another reason why we've been able to get to 28 practices. But yeah, systems are important. They all have their own manuals. Doctors have their own manuals, and that we do weekly Zoom calls with everybody. We then once a quarter we have the doctors, and twice a year doctors and the staff all we shut down every office and we do training and doing all those things for changes that has happened. So they're constantly involved with all of that. And if you look at the Small Business Association, they've done research on this, like why do people hate their job? The first one is nobody ever asked me my opinion. Okay, so we make sure we involve everybody into opinions, and like, let's face it, if there's a change with an insurance or something like that, say, hey, this is the insurance, I have no control over that, how do you suggest, give me some suggestions on how we should deal with that. So if they're involved in the decision making, they feel like they have autonomy and they're a part of the solution rather than just being forced at them. Now, nobody likes change, and that's just the reality of the situation, but for the most part, they understand if there's changes happening in Bluegrass Kyle, it's not because I got a bug up my ass. It comes down to that really something is wrong. So the number one thing that small business says is, okay, no, nobody asked my opinion. The number two reasons that most people do not actually like their job is, I don't like who I work with.
Mm.
So keeping a coherent thing, and it is a full time job to keep drama offices, right? It's he said this to me, and I can't you believe that you're, it's one of those things that when you're in a larger organization, I think Napoleon Hill said at one time, he said, hey, he said, if you have me, then it's my brain. If I have you, it's your brain. And if you have us, we have something like to a third brain. So the more people that you have in a group, which he called the mastermind, the more individualities that you have because of the relationship between you and I. So I have 60 something employees. As you can imagine, the permutations on that is ridiculous. So there's always some type of drama going on, and trying to keep that to a minimum is absolutely important because you need to make sure that your employees are happy who they work with. That, a front staff can sabotage the doctor in 1,000 ways. Okay. And the doctor is not even aware of it. Like, don't schedule patients, don't take co-pays. You'd be surprised how many ways that they can be sabotaged. So, when you have that front staff on your side, they're there to try to help you. Okay.
What else are
And
you
so,
doing? What else are you doing from a team building standpoint to give people that feeling of cohesion? Because I've actually heard that statistic before. I've heard it a little differently. Essentially, like one of the number one reasons that people leave an organization is that they don't have a friend or whatever. I think you said they
mm,
don't like the people they work with. So like the
yeah,
counter to that is like making sure that they feel like they have a friend in the co-working space. And one of the examples I heard, I don't know if you know who Scott Galloway is, but one of the
do,
things he done,
yes.
yeah. So one of the things he does with his team is that anytime his team wants to like go out and get dinner or get drinks or something like that, he just gives them the business card because he knows the ROI on that of like whatever he's going to spend for them to have a good time that night is actually going to keep them around and happy for a longer period of time, to your point of keeping people around 10, 15 years. I'm
Mhm.
curious of like what else you have done, or like what are things most people or docs aren't thinking about that they should be doing within their practice to build that cohesive team environment, I guess you could say.
Well, I love Scott, and I read most of his books. Absolutely love him. This is one of those things that I would kind of disagree with, and the reason is that you know, we talk about company culture all the time. Okay. I'm sure you have in your company, I have in mine, and all their listening audience, obviously, they have a culture in their business, whether they like it or not. You, you can get there, you can have a bad culture, just you didn't plan it. It just happens. Like, you got a culture, whether you believe it or not. Right. And so with the .com boom and all of these things, like the culture of Facebook is put out, and Google and all that is all like, let's sit around and have free lunches and bean bags, and I can go have a place to cry or something like that. And so that's the culture. And so now the smaller businesses are thinking that somehow we have to compete against that. We have to do that same thing. Give them a credit card, give them free lunch, get them whatever the case may be. And I'm a believer that our culture is support with responsibility. Okay. So basically, I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. If you need a few days off because your mom is sick, you got it. Absolutely, you got it. Okay. You need to come and talk to me about something. I'm here, full open. Okay. And so is all of my other middle managers as well. They're there for people. Okay. So they get the support, but they also get the support on how to get trained. If they, I don't know how to do this task that you want me to do, okay, well, let's get someone there to help you train you how to do that. If you're having problems delivering your report of findings, I'm not going to shout at you. I'm going to try to see if I can tool you up. Okay. So there's a lot of support, but then you need to really much outline what the responsibilities are. Look, I'm going to support you, but your responsibility is still to see patients. Like, I'm sorry, your responsibility is to still to do rehabilitation on these patients with some therapeutic exercise, not just adjust them and send them out the door. I'm sorry, that's not how bluegrass chiro works. Okay, so there is responsibility. So I'm trying to bring back that culture. In the 70s and 80s, is like shut your mouth and do what I told you to do, blah 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 blah, and like that didn't work. Okay, that did not work. But then we went too far to the other side, too far left, where we think, okay, it's all sunshines and rainbows and beanbag chairs. And I'm thinking reality is we got to bring back support with responsibility. I'm here for you. I'm not just your boss. I want to be, a part of, your solutions and your problems. I want you to be coming to me when there's issues. But let's not drop the ball here. We got a job to do. So support and responsibility is sort of the culture. So I think when you do that, people know who you are, what you stand for, what your mission is. Our mission in Bluegrass Chiro is see as many people as you can, get them well as best as you can, make as much money as you can, do it, and spread the word of chiropractic. That's our mission. Okay. So if they know the mission, they know the responsibilities, they know they got support, that's why people don't leave and they make good money. Okay. So it comes down to we're not a gulag. We're not there, browbeating people because they're not following our rules. We say, well, let's sit down and talk about that. If, of course, there's severe rules, you know, insurance breaching things or, relationships with patients, you're fired. Like there's no tolerance for those things. But it comes down to it is most people don't leave us because they know exactly what their responsibilities and they know I'm there for them, not just there trying to line my pocket.
Hmm. Yeah, I've had I don't know if you know Tony Daramus, I think is how you pronounce his
The
last name.
Raymondship, I know Tony well.
Okay, yeah. So he was on the show. If anybody wants to go check that episode out, but he one of the things that he brought up when we were talking about the same topic was that he was creating the culture of a professional sports team. Is how he kind of addressed it. Is that you're here to like, yeah, work hard, but you also like we provide incredible service. We're A players. Like that was more his approach is like attracting those type of people versus like you're like, yeah, give me the credit card and let me buy all the free things type of person. And I don't think there's necessarily like a wrong answer. I think it's obviously like what kind of
Yeah.
culture you want to build. I'm
Yeah.
curious though, is like how do you recruit though, right? Like I think you kind of broke down how you keep people around, how you keep them happy, making sure they have a friend, making sure that they're in an environment that's like supportive and cohesive, but also like holds you to a certain responsibility. But what about from like an attraction standpoint? I know one of the biggest challenges by far, I have this conversation so often for docs, is hiring and
Yeah.
recruiting. And what does that look like for you guys?
Well, let me just give you sort of a higher level view of this recruiting thing. I know a lot of people in the recruiting space, chiro matchmakers, whatever, and they claim that right now there is actually 4 ads out there for every chiropractor that's looking for a job. Now, think about that, right?
Wow.
So nobody is going to get as many chiros as they want. I'll tell you that right now because we need 4 times more than we have. And, I had planned on bringing this up later when we got into the school stuff, but I'll tell you also right now, when I went to school, I graduated in 2001, so right about 25 years ago. Um, in 2001, there were approximately 15,000 students in a chiropractic program somewhere in the United States. Okay, somewhere. And my school wasn't even open at that point. Okay, and many others weren't either. Like Kaiser wasn't open, Dioval wasn't open, all that type of stuff. So, 15,000 students. Um, about 5 years ago, there was 10,000 students in a chiropractic program somewhere. Today, it's not even 9,000. Now, so what is we doing? Okay, we are getting there. We're all in competition. So chiros like me that want to grow, that I need associates. I cannot be in 28 locations. I can't clone myself. That is not, we can't do any of that stuff. So you need to have associates. Okay. And so we're all basically competing for the same 9,000. And remember, 9,000, that's 9,000 in the program. The program is 3 years long. So that means there's only approximately, 2,500 students per year that are graduating. Okay. So we're all competing for those. And that's a difficult thing to do. Um, when in doubt and you don't know what you're doing, and I shouldn't say that because that's making it seem like I know what I'm doing, but there you go. But is to just go offer them more money. Okay, so you can start over there for 70,000. I'll start you with 90,000, that type of thing, right? Um, and it's not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't work long term because you need to give a student, and that's usually who you're talking about with your hiring is new grads. You need to give a student a solid base wage. It needs to be reasonable, but bonus structures are so important. And some of the bonus structures that I have seen, Corey, are ridiculous. I know, again, a lot of students that graduate school and they go all around the country and they send me their, potential employer's contract. I've seen some ridiculous stuff. One said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus after you see 500 patients a month." Cool, not a big deal. They started them off at 70,000, and I'm going to give you a bonus after 500 patients. But it didn't stipulate what the bonus was. So I said, "Can you ask the doctor what the bonus is?" You know what the bonus was? If
Hmm.
you see 500 patients, I'm going to give you an extra $50. That's the bonus. Like, come on, right? That's ridiculous. Like $50 just is $100 to fill up my truck with gas now. This is ridiculous. Okay. So those types of things are a problem. You can't do that. Like that's not a reasonable bonus. Then there's other people who get there and say, okay, I'm going to give you 60 or 70 or $80,000 plus bonus. And you see the bonus doesn't cut in until they make 60 or 70,000 collections every month. The average collections per patient across the country is somewhere around 65 to 70 bucks, say 65 to 85 bucks. That's the average collection per encounter. Okay. So if that's the case, you could do the backwards math on that. In order for you to bring in $80,000 before your bonus cuts in, you got to realize what are you seeing? 250 people a week? Like it's unbelievable, right? So those numbers are unattainable. And so that's the problem. Like you got to make sure that your contract is mutually beneficial. That yes, okay, the chiropractor, the associate is going to make some money with you, and you need to make some money too. It's a business. It's got to make some money. But if you got a house in the Hamptons and they're driving a beat up Honda Civic and they work for you for 5 years, there's a problem with that. And so the statement used to always be that chiropractors eat their young. And let's face it, it's not quite that vulgar, okay? But those are the types of rapturous things that we see that's a problem in our profession. So now every student has their senses are on high alert, waiting to see what shyster is going to go off and do something, right? So it needs to be reasonable. It needs to be reasonable and beneficial for all concerned. A good Rotary statement, right? Beneficial to all concerned. So I think that's where we come in. We really have like it's going to be beneficial. I'll let you know now that the majority, if we had to take the pie and break it up, that a certain amount is for the associate's wage, there's a certain amount for rent, there's a certain amount for your front staff and all your benefits and all that. The biggest part of that pie goes to the associate, not to me. Okay. And so we make sure that it's lucrative for them. Yes, we can't have them seeing 30 a day, 30 a week, but there's no need of seeing 200 either. In today's world where students are graduating from school, they're toting evidence-based chiropractic all the time in all the schools, and all the schools are doing it. Okay, all the schools are doing it, and it's not necessarily a wrong. I actually think we should be evidence-based. I'm not saying that, but how you define it is very important. Evidence-based, patient-centered care is very common to be said. But do you know if you ask the average chiropractor that's getting straight out of school, what does patient-centered mean? Patient-centered means, oh, give the patient what they want. No, that's not what it is. It's like your children. You don't give your children what they
Hmm.
want. They would eat candy every day. You're supposed to give them what they need and not any more than they need. Just give them what they need. But somehow in the minds of the new grad, it is give them what they want. I'm like, a patient wants to come once and not pay you. That's what they want. Okay. Just like you, who's signing up for a gallbladder surgery? You could have all kinds of abdominal pain right now. You go to the surgeon, he says, you need a gallbladder surgery. You're like, ooh, I don't want to do that. Well, who do? Who wants to do that? Right? It doesn't make any sense. So you just got to realize that they're coming out that way and they kind of want to be glorified physical therapists. It's a bad move. I don't want that to be the case for chiropractic. Like I said, physical therapists are great at what they do, absolutely great at what we do. We got them, let them do that. Chiropractor is different, but they want to do that, which means they want to see 10 people a day. And that's equally not feasible. You can't see 10 people a day at an average collection of $65 per visit and then say, oh, can you pay me $150,000 a year? That math does not line up.
Mm.
Okay. So the student also needs to be aware of what the real factors are. Okay. What is your average collection? So I'm a big believer in, like, let's sit down and I'll show you everything I got. I am full transparent when I'm doing an interview. This is our average collections per patient per year based on all of our stats of all of the 80 something thousand visits that we saw last year. Okay. They're like, okay, cool. So they know. And I said, so now if you see 20 a day, this is what you're going to make. If you see 30 a day, this is what you're going to make. And they know in advance what they're going to make. It's full transparency. Okay. So now they know what to do. And I think a lot of that's being covered up and not talked about in a lot of interviews when people are interviewing people. So nobody, they're thinking, you're going to make an absolute fortune off of me and you're going to pay me pennies. So again, their spidey sense gets tingling and they don't want to go in there. So we have a full transparency model. Most of the chiros that come to me are also referrals from the chiros that already work for me. Okay, so they know somebody who's graduating school, we should come here because they're happy. And because most new grads are nervous about going working for this doctor or that doctor, what do they want to do? They want to go somewhere where they know someone's going to treat them right. So we get a lot. So the larger we get, it's easier to find associates because we have so many networks out there right now. Okay. And again, in the practice of chiropractic, the season that I have of 25 years of experience is important, right? That gives me a better understanding on how to treat a patient. I am the worst to actually find out to get a new associate at a school. I don't have those contacts. I have no, but the student who just came to work for us from Logan, he knows everybody in his graduating class. Right? So he'll say, "Oh, Joe, you need to come work for this guy. Judy, you need to come work for this guy." So the referrals are coming from the young chiros. They're the ones that have the network in that world, not I.
Mm.
Okay. So anyway, we really are fully transparent. We make sure it's lucrative for them with a lot of inter. We make sure to go talk to any of my chiros, give them their number and let them tell you. Because most doctors are going to, blow smoke up their own butt saying, hey, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. But it comes down to, why don't you talk to some of the people that work for me? Let's see what they have to say. So I
Yeah.
like to do that. I'm very, very transparent. And I think that's a lot of the way. So everybody's getting leads, regards to, oh, I want to find an associate. Everybody's getting leads. The problem is they're not coming and working for this doctor or that doctor
Mm.
because they smell a rat or I'm never going to make any money here, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
our average chiro is making, $120,000 a year, and we have chiros making, our associates making over 200. So it comes down to it is if you're making that amount of money, you're not going anywhere. You can pay your student loans off. Students want to pay their student loans out of that. If they don't want to, they better check their ego because it comes down to it is if they don't pay back their student loans, one of these days those student loans are not going to be there because the default rate is too high.
Mm.
And then can you imagine what would happen to this profession if all of the student loans says, yeah, you know what? If you're going to be a medical doctor, I'll give you some student loans. But if you're going to be a child, you can't get a student loan. It would kill our profession like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always liked the analogy of the pie that you alluded to a second ago, and I have a buddy who he owns a chain of Jimmy John's, and he gave that analogy to me once, and it's stuck with me ever since. Of the fact that he's willing to give up a bigger portion of the pie to allow the pie to be bigger, knowing that his
Yeah.
portion grows as everybody else's portion grows, which is essentially what you're describing, right? Is like you're giving up what could potentially be money in your pocket to grow a bigger pie and to be able to open more locations, knowing that everybody's pie grows in that circumstance. To stay on this
Yeah.
topic of referrals, you said it a few times of like you're getting leads or referrals for new docs. So that's internally. But what about like externally? What about like growing their practices? I think I've heard you say that your number one way of getting new patients is via referrals. What's the
Mhm.
system behind that?
Well, you know, we've done the research in our own company where we said, okay, when does a patient refer? Okay. And what you'll see is that on average, if a patient comes in They may refer the first day. Oh my Lord, Dr. Short is so good. And now I'm sending my husband in. Okay, you got a bump in the curve right at that point. That was what we call the personality referral. They like you. Okay, that's it. They like you. And if they like you, they send someone else. That's important. So be likable. If you're not likable, if you're obtuse and you're just crass and bossy and all that stuff with patients, and you say, I don't know why I don't get referrals. Well, because you're an ass. That's why, right? That's what you want to say to them. So it comes down to it is be personable, be likable is where you get the first bump. Then after that, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth visit, you don't really see many referrals at all. And then you'll go off and you'll see a big bump again, somewhere around the 12 to 15 visits.
Hmm.
And the reason is the journal manipulative therapy says that it takes 12 to 18 visits to get someone well. So what you're starting to see now is you're starting to see a referral on the second end of the curve because people are getting well and they're like, I've not felt this good in years. You need to go see Dr. Short. So you really got two types of people, those that will refer based on personality and those that will refer based on how effective you are. The best thing you can do is be both, okay? Because then you're going to get referrals on both ends. So if you're getting the PVA, and PVA stands for patient visit average, which means how many times are you seeing a patient on average before they go away. So we look at short-term and long-term PVA. Short-term is a little bit harder. So what we're doing is we're actually going through files and we are counting how many times this person came in, how many patients, and we're getting an acute version of, okay, how many times a patient is coming in. If the PVA is small, 5, 6, 7, you're only going to get the bump in the beginning, assuming you're a nice, likable person. Okay. And that's not always the case. But if you got a PVA of 15, 20, 25, 30, you're going to get, and you're likable, you're going to get double bumps. You're going to get on both of that. So we try to make sure that we said, okay, how can we be effective and how can we be nice? All right. And so you get both. That's the best thing you can do with that. The world of advertising, like if you're coming straight out of school and you open up your own practice and you got a database of 0, you need to advertise. Absolutely need to advertise. But if you've been in practice for years, you should have a database that's huge. I've been in forums with doctors in a group that don't work for me, other people that are got large practices like I do. And they're all talking about marketing sides, Google AdWords, Facebook marketing, all these other things that everybody does. And I'm sure you have had many guests on talking about those types of ways to, get leads. And then I'll just pipe up and goes, okay, guys, you told me about your external marketing. What is your internal marketing? Most people have nothing, nothing. And they got massive practices that have nothing. I remember there was one guy in my group. He had one office, and in that office, he was doing $3 million a year in that one office, but he was spending $1 million in ad every year, $1 million in advertising in order to get that. And I asked him, well, what type of internal marketing are you doing? And he had none. I said, okay, so you're not actually like we have systems where like, okay, if you fall off your care, let's say I got you scheduled for 12 visits, you fall off on the sixth one, we have a procedure to get them back in the office. Does it work 100% of the time? No, but it works more than if we had none. Okay. So what is your procedure to get them reactivated in before they fall too far off? Because we tell the patient at that point, okay, if you go away for 2 weeks and you interrupt your care, when you come back in, we start over and you're going to be coming back in. So why are you doing that? Let's get back on the horse again. Okay. So reactivation that way. We also have a 6 months policy where we go off and doctors text and call patients and say, hey, it's been 6 months. Just checking in with you. No need for you to come in unless you're absolutely have a problem. Just want to let you know that we're here for you. Hopefully you're feeling a lot better. That's it. Not even a soliciting type thing. Okay. We have about anywhere from 14 to 40% reactivations at that point. Okay. Of people coming in. And this is free, guys. This is people that are already in your database. So if you do that, you talk about referrals with your patients. The sincerest form of flattery is a referral for a chiropractor. We talk about that. Okay. So if you're doing those internal things, then after a while, you don't need as much external because you're constantly feeding. And I'll let you know when you get a patient come into your office from Facebook, their compliance is nowhere near as good as what a referral is. Okay. Because they say, oh, Aunt Judy says you're amazing. And then they just listen to you. Okay. So it's important for you to have both, really. You need external marketing and you need internal marketing. But if you got external, all you're doing is just throwing money out. You need to be getting some internal marketing as well. Get these systems set up so that you're constantly getting, leads and reactivations.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always said there's trade offs, right? Is like, I mean, obviously, I've had many of these conversations and talked to many doctors as well as you have. And what I've seen is like, yeah, when you have the referrals, the local, the belly to belly, like I love that stuff because it's really high conversion.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, they're already warmed up. If you get a referral, you're already like almost like you're getting like the joined, or I guess like the you get their goodwill as well, right? If a friend refers you, you also get their goodwill, so they're more likely to trust you, and et cetera, et cetera. But then when you look at the digital side, or even like the external side, a lot higher time consumption, or you're a lot higher price consumption, and
Yep.
conversions are typically a little bit lower, but it obviously can save you time because you're not having to do a lot of belly belly stuff. I'm curious
Mhm.
is like how you think about the external side of the marketing just in general, especially across 28 practices. Like how are you thinking about external marketing, Google, you said social, like how do you think about that just in general?
Yeah. So again, in the introduction, it says, I have 28 clinics in rural Kentucky. So rural Kentucky and rural areas is a whole lot different beast than if you're in Houston or you're in Austin or you're in Chicago. You know, if you're in Chicago, there's a million Kairos. And how are you going to make yourself known? Right. So at that point, then it's a lot of how much money are you going to spend in advertising and that type of thing. In rural areas is a little bit different. Yes, do we do Google AdWords in the beginning? Yes, we do. Do we do Facebook ads in the beginning? Yes, we do. Okay. But we try to do as many health talks and screenings as we can. They're still external, of course, but it takes a lot of time from the doctor to be out there. Um, and then we graph it, like, okay, when I teach it in school, I say, okay, when you're new, your external marketing is high, your internal is low. Why? Because you don't have a database. But then, as you get more of a bigger database, your internal marketing goes up and your external goes down. And so you need to find out where they cross over. At that point, you say, okay, now I know where my minimum is, and that's where I need to stay there. Are you spending $1,000 a month, and that's your minimum just for SEO, or maybe if you Google AdWords or something of that point? But in the beginning, you're spending a whole lot more of external because you just don't have a database. You have to do it. So yes, you're spending money for billboards. You're spending money for their. It's interesting too with billboards. Like billboards are like when they go up. I've never really got much patients coming in from billboards until they come down. What an odd thing. That's unbelievable. Like you put them up, nothing, nothing, nothing. You take them down, and it's like, where'd your billboard go? I'm like, really? Like, so I took it down, then you came in here, right? So those types of things, you got to keep, you got to track this stuff, and you got to keep your eyes open and say, like, this doesn't make any sense, but I'm not the general public, so I just run with it, right? That type of thing. So billboards, radio ads, like when we've done radio in the past, it really didn't work until we did testimonials. So
Mm,
now what we'll do is we'll get patients that really love us to sit down with their disc jockey, and they will do some ads and talk about testimonials. And then in the rural area, everybody knows Judy, and everybody knows Sam. And so that has a lot of social proof at that point where you say, okay, get someone who's prominent in town. If you are in Chicago, your chances of adjusting the mayor is next to none. If you're in a small town of 10,000 people, that mayor is coming into you just like anybody else. So prominent people in your town at that point, and you can use those as testimonials to go off and get more in there, and which social proof goes up. So it is easier to market in a small town. You're not dealing with market saturation. You're not dealing with a lot of competition things. Yeah, I'll tell you also I do have some clinics in cities of 60 to 70,000 people as well. Not a big city, but utilization of patients is higher in rural areas. So if you say 5% of the population in a city goes to a chiro, I'm telling you it's 50% in rural America goes to a chiro. A lot of people, the more rural you are, the utilization is higher. So it's different for me. And you had mentioned Tony a little while ago. Him and I, we sit and talk about this type of stuff all the time. If he had to do what he does in my area, he'd be bankrupt. If
mm,
I had to do what I do in his area, I'd be bankrupt. You have to have your some sense about you, your wits about you to say that works there, but it doesn't work here. That's the great thing. What I love what you're doing here, for instance, with this Cairo X is You're getting different people in because some of your audience are in rural America. Some of your audience are in big cities. Some are in those rim states around thing where insurance is bad. You got all these different things. I never want to come across as a guru, like you have to, in order to win, you have to practice like I do. I don't think that's needed at all. There's many, many ways to the promised land. You can be successful in a lot of different ways. You can be successful with integrated medicine. You can be successful with strike chiropractic. You can be successful in a lot of cash pay. You can be successful in a lot of different ways, but you got to know where you are. Okay. In our state, for instance, 30% of the population is on Medicaid, and Medicaid pays well. So I'm like, why wouldn't I take Medicaid? So being a cash practice here would be suicide for me. And there's going to be areas where like everybody here has a $50,000 deductible. It's useless to take their insurance. You got to understand your market. You got to know where actually people are, where you are.
Yeah.
And even the state laws are different in all places. And so, really do a lot of analysis and say, did I come to Florida because I just like the sunny weather? Or did I come here because I can practice the way I want to practice? And so a lot of people now are just going there for this lifestyle and they're like, ugh, yeah, but you're poor. You're a pauper now living on the beach because you can't afford to buy a car. I hear all kinds of stuff like that. Like, I can't pay my mortgage. I'm like, then get out of Dodge. You're
Yeah.
in the wrong place for the way that you want to practice.
The thing I love and hate the most about business and entrepreneurship is you're painting a blank canvas. Whenever people come to me for advice on whatever their business or what they should do or entrepreneurship or should I start this business or that business, and it's like, the challenge and the beauty of it is that it's like being like put in front of a canvas and you're handed a paintbrush and you're like, all right, paint. And then they look at you and they're like, what do I paint? It's like, I don't know. You're going to find out though. It's like something's going to come to fruition. And it also means that the first version of it is probably going to be freaking horrible. And it's going to
Horrible.
eventually get prettier as you go. But it just feels, I've just always loved that analogy because that's what it feels like. But
Yeah.
uh,
And realizing that, like, okay, you've painted. Now you got to ask your question: is someone going to buy this? Because
100%.
if you're
Yeah.
trying to if
Is
you're
it
trying to feed your
pretty?
family,
No. Try again. Like,
yeah, I'm sorry, it's not what it is. And starting this business, like I've had people all the time come to me, oh, I got this great idea. I goes, I don't care. I don't care. And the reason is your idea are a dime a dozen. And what is your ability to execute that idea? It makes a bigger sense to me if you're going to be successful or not. And people say, well, what business should I start up? I don't know. What are you willing to walk on broken glass for? They're like, what do you mean? I goes, do you think this is easy? This is not easy. I have come so close to bankruptcy multiple times. This is scary stuff, and it is not meant for everybody to do this stuff. And so you got to realize when I had my seventh office, I opened up was in Frankfort, Kentucky. Okay, and I had like I was working. I'm seeing patients all day long. I can't afford a maintenance guy. I can't afford a compliance person. I can't afford a trainer. I can't afford any of that stuff. I'm just holding it all together. So I went to go open up my office, and the guy that gave me the bid on building the office was 150,000. I didn't have 150,000, and I wasn't worth enough at that point to go to the bank and say, "Can you give me 150,000 of unsecured loan?" They're like, "No, you're not going to get it." So you know what I did? I took $30,000 out of my savings, and I went up, and when I stopped seeing patients at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I would go to the house. I would get a quick bite to eat. I would go up there, and I built that place out. I would come home. Okay, I would come home at 3 in the morning. I would take 3 hours sleep. I would get up, and I'd see my other patients that I was seeing at 6 o'clock. And it took me 3 months to build up that practice by doing it myself. I did the drywall. I did the car. I did everything in 3 months. Most people are like, that's a lot of work. I know. That's what it takes. But that's what it takes. Now, today I can afford to just go pay a contractor to go do it. Okay. And I'll do that. I have no problem. But in the beginning, your why has to be big enough to you say, are you willing to lose sleep over it? Yes. Are you willing to walk on broken glass? Yes. And so because my mission was to see more doctors being affluent, one of the things that bothers me so much is that the average chiropractor, if you look at the labor statistics, the average chiropractor in America makes like $70,000 a year. It's ridiculous, right? And affluence is not common in our profession. And my job is to try to say, how can I make more doctors affluent?
Hmm.
And in order to do that, I have to give them the right contract, of course, give them the right stage so they can, when they sing, they actually someone hears it. Okay, give them good training, give them all that stuff. But I love it, absolutely love it when I cut big checks to my doctors. I'm not trying to find a way to go off and say, "Oh, you don't need to make that amount of money," and cut their weight. I love it. I want them to make as much money as can. That's my mission, is because I'm fine financially myself. I don't need another office. But if I can help one more Caro get successful, that's what puts fire in my belly.
I love the mission, man. On that note, thanks for the easy transition. One of the reasons that I was most excited to bring you on the show is that you're not your typical teacher. You're somebody that actually walked the walk before you tried to talk the talk, because there are plenty of professors out there that talk about business or teach about business and have never opened a business a day in their life. And I don't necessarily respect those people. No offense, but you're at a university that actually has a program that teaches in depth about business and things that obviously you've probably learned in the real world. I'm curious as to why did you start it, and tell us a little bit more about the vision of this
On the
university.
school. Yeah, so to give you a little history there. So the president of the university came to me and said, I had a board of trustees wants to open up a chiropractic program, and we're interviewing people. And they interviewed a bunch of people, and they decided that I was the best candidate for it. And so they offered me the job, and I goes, I need another job like I need a hole in the head. So I'm going to tell you something right now. I will do it because I'm committed to this profession, but you better let me build what I want to build. I'm like, okay, what do you want to build? I goes, well, first of all, our cost of our education is too high. Now, it's not only tuition, by the way. You know, the average chiropractic tuition is about $150,000 to get the whole program done. I wanted it less than that, so ours is the least in the nation. So I built it that way. And but the schools are also in very, big areas. Like I have one student that transferred from St. Louis, and they said, okay, my rent here is $1,200 in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, and it was 3,500 in St. Louis.
Hmm.
Just think about that. Okay, if you take $2,000 or $2,200 a month difference, times that by 12, that's $24,000. You're going to be here for 4 years. It's $100,000 saving in your student loan debt just because you don't have to buy a $3,500 rent in St. Louis. Okay, so you got to realize it's more about yes, tuition matters, but it's more about what is the total cost that they're going to have when they get out of school. So the average chiropractor, if you look across the country, has about in the low 300s, 320, 340 in student loans. We've had two graduating classes so far. Ours is in the 180 is where they're actually graduating with that student loan debt. So that makes a big difference. So I wanted to get the cost of education down. The other thing is, hey, we're supposed to be business people. Yeah, we got to get out of school and open up our own business, or at least that's the goal or the dream for most chiros. But then our school just very much do not equip us to do that. You know, they have resources and all that. One guy that I gave, it was a seasoned chiro, came in, did a tour of the school a little while ago, and I was talking about this, and he said, "Do you know?" He said that when I did business in school, and I won't say where he went to school, he said my teacher graduated one semester before me.
That's what I'm
Okay,
talking about, man.
think
Like,
about it. That's absolute foolishness, right? So you don't have any. There's no teeth to that bite because you don't know what you're talking about. If you today in today's world, Corey, you got to understand everything you can teach a student. You can get it on Google and Chat GPT. You don't need to go to school at all. So why would you go to school? If I need information, I can just ask Google. Why would I go to school? Because you're there for the experience of the people that are teaching you. So I have 28 practices. I know how to run a business. So when I say what you need to do, step one, two, three, and four, in order to open up your business, that has teeth because I've done it 28 times. Okay. So it's different than someone says, I've never done this before, and you're just reading a book. I don't need you. I can look up this online. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to do that. I wanted to have a more fiscally responsibility to the student so that their success rate was higher. Because currently, right now, like I said, 15,000 students, what it was in the program, then it was 10, now it's down to a little less than 9. And I'm just saying, like, our profession in a lot of metrics looks like it's dying. Now, I don't believe our profession is going to die at all. Let's face it, we're at a better, public, perception of what we do is better than it's ever been. We are no longer like DJ Palmer, who used to adjust people in their basement so that they didn't go to jail. That day is over. So our public opinion is really, really high. That's good. So I don't think it's going to go. But if you look at the health of any industry, the amount of people coming out of school that are doing it is a good indicator of where we are. And that volume is shrinking dramatically in our profession. So what are we going to do about it? And one of the reasons is the average student now, because they have Google, they have ChatGPT, they're saying, why in the world would I spend $350,000 to get an $80,000 a year job? That is lunacy. So, we got to get that changed. We need to make sure that affluence is a normal part. I wrote an article just a couple of months ago, 2 months in a row, for Dynamic Chiropractic that talked about the problems in our profession that we're talking about right now. And I got some hate mail. You always do. I'm sure you get your hate mail too. Right? So I got some hate mail, and the hate mail is like, "Oh, you're just trying to feed your own program." Blah 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 blah. I goes, "No, the program was built to fix the problems, not I'm trying to highlight what everybody else is doing wrong and you feed them to me. You're putting the cart before the horse here. Okay. The program was done in order to fix the problems. And the problem needs to be fixed because if it doesn't, our next few years, all of your listening audiences, I'm trying to find an associate. One of the questions you ask is like, how do you find associates? That's not going to get easier. That's going to get harder if we can't put more people in schools. So one of the things I love to do is like if you got an organization my size or whatever your listening audience that does, is I would say, why don't you sponsor a student?
Mm.
Go in the first or second trimester and find someone who's just on a rock star who's on fire and pay their tuition. So they graduate with no and go off and say, hey, you got to work with me for 5 years if you do that. Like those are great things to do. You need to be a part of that. And I've done that for 3 and 4 semesters for students. I'm like, hey, why don't you come work for me? I'll pay your net last 4 semesters of your university. That cuts your student loan down. Your success is going to go up. You guarantee you now got a rock star. That's good, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to do when I wanted to open up this school is really fix some of those problems. And I think we have. I really think we have done that. We have other things that's unique about our program, but now I just teach business there. I used to run it for a while, but now I don't run it anymore. I just teach there. Um, I needed to kind of get back on the horse for a bluegrass cow because when you're focused on looking over here, don't be surprised what brings in the bacon doesn't start going down, right? So you gotta all right. So I needed to get back on the horse anyway. So I teach the business curriculum. We have 18 credits of business that I teach there, but I'm no longer in charge of that place.
Dennis, we've covered a lot of ground today, man. Is there any topics that we didn't hit on that you wish we would have gone into? I mean, we covered a lot. We quite covered hiring and recruiting and marketing and geographical things and where you should open cash and where you shouldn't open insurance and the school. Is there anything we didn't
Yeah.
cover
Oh, there's a lot we didn't cover.
that you want to, anyways?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, maybe this will be a round two for us, but understanding your KPIs is really important. I have coached a lot of doctors across the country. The successful doctors out there are always measuring statistics and they're living their life by them. And the unsuccessful chiros couldn't answer that question if you were torturing them.
What are
They
the
do
top
not
what are
know.
the top 3 numbers every chiropractic business owner should know?
Your collections per visit, your codes, if you're insurance, your number of bills, your codes per visit, okay? The relative value of those codes, because doing electrostim for $8 and doing isometric stretching for $22 matters. It's still one code though, isn't it? So you got to realizing where your money is and knowing what levers that you could pull in order to change that.
Hmm.
PVA is always important. If you have a low PVA, you're just constantly trying to get new patients. Always, you need 40 to 50 new patients to keep your numbers up. But if you got a high PVA, a dozen or so new patients a month will keep you going. So all those types of things. These are big. The money obviously is important. You got to pay the bills. You got to keep the lights on. But those are the ones that I track a lot. Like your codes per visit, your collections per visit, PVA, build per visit, those types of things.
Hmm.
So the KPIs are really important, and I get that. Another way, how do you manage? One thing we did talk about is how do you manage 28 clinics? You say, how do you start them? How do you manage them? And one of them is every day they fill out KPI sheets and I get them and I go through them every day. I know what every office saw, every doctor saw. I know how many new patients we have every day. I know where we need so that I can pull the levers properly. So if I have to build per visit, if it's low in this office, I'll look at their stats and say, why are you only billing 2 codes per visit on everybody? On your insurance, like that's off. You need to be looking at that deeper. So we get those daily and actually control the metrics on that.
How many numbers are the docs filling out per day?
The staff do it, not the docs. The staff do it, and it's all come from the EHR.
Got it.
These things, all these EHRs can give you any stat that you want these days, and so they just fill them out and just take a picture of them and send them to me at the end of the day.
Got it.
Yes, so the staff do it. So they don't know how to interpret those stats, and that's a whole nother class too. To go off and say what does PVA mean, I could tell you, but like what does it really mean? Well, if PVA is low, it means that the doctor has poor communication skills and people are dropping off like flies. If you exude confidence and I'm talking to you and you say you need to come in here for 10 visits or 12 visits or 15 visits, then I follow you. If you come in and say, if it's all right with you, possibly could you come in again tomorrow? The answer is no. No patient is following someone who hasn't got a clue what they're doing, right? So PVA is really an indication of confidence because you'll see very seasoned doctors have a high PVA and new doctors have a very low one because they have a lot of imposter syndrome and they're just not skilled yet on talking to people. So interpretation of stats is extremely important, not just what the number is. Okay, so but the staff don't know how to interpret these stats. They just give it to me blank slate.
Yeah.
So
People want to be led, man. Dennis Short, what's your plug? Where can people find you? You got anything you want to plug to people?
yeah, I'm not much of a socialite. I'll just tell you that right now, because it's and hopefully your listening audience appreciates it. I'm not in this for anything. Like I don't need more likes. I don't I'm not in this for me, right? I tell people all the time, it goes, you got to realize you'll do better in life when you realize that God put you on this planet, not for you, but for everybody else that you serve. And never forget who you serve. If you're a practitioner, you serve your patients. If you're a business owner, you serve the people that work for you. If you own a school, you serve the students. Always be aware of who you serve and don't take your eye off of that. So I don't really care about, likes and this and this. I'm not trying to become a Scott Galloway. I'm not trying to do that, right? That type of thing. Our website for Bluegrass Chiro is just bluegrasschiro.com. That's easy. Okay. Um, the school is Campbellsville University. I'll give you my email at the university. It's dshort@campbellsville.edu. dshort@campbellsville.edu. So you can email me if you have any questions. Like I say, I just want to raise the profession up. It would be such a crime if this profession decreases to the point into obscurity.
Hmm.
I've had people that were at suicidal tendencies, don't. I've had crippled people walk. And can you imagine that if we lost this? This would be horrible, a horrible thing. And we need to really take heed and ask ourselves, what am I doing in order to fix this problem? Heard that statement, somebody needs to fix this. Well, maybe that somebody's you, that type of thing. So that's why I appreciate people like you who are out there trying to help doctors because we all need to be more successful and you're being a part of the solution, not the problem, which is great.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic and hopeful for the future of the practice, honestly, man. Especially with like JFK in office and it
Yeah.
becoming more people becoming more aware of the practice and wanting more holistic approaches and not wanting to go to pharmaceuticals and yada yada yada. Is like I'm hopeful for it, to be honest. So
Yeah. And I'm on several boards across the country to try and help some of that work out. And I'll let you know that working with the ICA and the ACA as well on a joint venture to try to get full Medicare inclusion. That's an important thing. And so, especially for states that reimbursements are low, like in New York, I've coached a few people in New York, and they have like this fixed stuff. Like if you have an insurance, and you could do 3 codes, 4 codes, 10 codes, you get $35 a visit. Doesn't matter what you do. I don't know how you can stay afloat in that. That's not very much money. So you'll see more cash practices at place like that where the insurance reimbursement is just so low. But if we had full Medicare inclusion, you'd be getting $120 to $150 a visit. Let's face it, more chiropractors would take Medicare if they knew they were going to get paid that. Okay, so full Medicare inclusion would be an absolute jewel for us, and I'm working on some different forms to try to get that to happen.
Nice. Love it. Dennis, this has been great, man. Thanks again. Appreciate it.